Good morning. I am pleased to be joined today by leaders from every component of public education in Missouri: our elementary and secondary schools, our community colleges, and our public four-year colleges and universities. The men and women standing with me today are teachers and educators, superintendents and school board members, chancellors and presidents. They serve students and communities in every corner of the Show Me State, and their work is vital to the economic recovery, growth, and transformation of our state. I'm also pleased to be joined by several members of my administration, including the Director of Economic Development, David Kerr, State Budget Director, Linda Lubring, and the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education, Chris Nicastro, and the First Lady of the State of Missouri, Georgianne Nixon. We convened this high-level group of public education leaders today to discuss the critical role of education in economic growth. The link between the two is fundamental. To compete for new jobs and new investment in the 21st century, Missouri must have a workforce that is trained, educated, and second to none. That means we must have world-class elementary and secondary schools that give our students the tools to learn and succeed, whether they're bound for a college campus or for the workforce. We must have agile and innovative community colleges that prepare students for successful careers in diverse fields, from biotechnology to healthcare to automotive mechanics to the culinary arts. We must have excellent, accessible, and affordable four-year institutions to educate students in professional fields and in the liberal arts, to spark breakthroughs in science, research, and technology, and to attract new investment and new business opportunities in Missouri. And at every level, we must have dedicated teachers who know they have our unwavering commitment, cooperation, and support. As I reported to the people of Missouri at the end of March, we're facing a shortfall of at least $500 million in the budget for fiscal year 2011. We face the immediate task of cutting costs and increasing efficiency to overcome that challenge. But we must also continue to work together to lay the strongest possible foundation for future economic growth. To lay that foundation, it is absolutely vital that we continue to invest in education, from preschool all the way to graduate school. And we have worked diligently to avoid the types of drastic cuts to education other states have seen. But as everyone knows, state government is not like Washington, D.C. We don't print money. Just like every Missouri business, family, and school district, we must balance our budget every year, even when it's tough. And when revenues don't match expenses, we have to make difficult choices. That's why Missouri's education leaders have joined with me today to call on the legislature to pass comprehensive tax credit reform this year. Over the last 10 years, the use of state tax credits has ballooned to $585 million a year. That's an 86% growth. Two of these programs, quite frankly, have exploded. Specifically, Missouri ranks first in the nation in expenditures on state historic tax credits each year. In 2008, Missouri spent $161 million on historic tax credits. Virginia, a state with a rich history and a lot of old buildings, spent half of that. Last year, Missouri's expenditure grew even higher to $186 million. At the same time, Missouri ranks second in the nation for the amount we spend each year on low-income housing tax credits. According to a report from the state auditor, Missouri awarded $176 million for low-income housing credits in 2007. California, with a population 6 times the size of Missouri, awarded half as much. In total, Missouri has more than 60 different state tax credits and programs. Our commitment to public education must not be jeopardized by the rapid and unchecked growth of these programs. To move our economy forward, Missouri must invest in its limited resources in programs that are proven to deliver the best possible return on investment for our taxpayers, with a clear benefit to the state. Public education is at the top of that list. Every dollar we spend on tax credits is a dollar that isn't available for K-12 schools to invest in teaching, reading, math, and science. Every dollar we spend on tax credits is a dollar that isn't available for our community colleges to invest in training nurses, mechanics, and lab techs. Every dollar we spend on tax credits is a dollar that isn't available for our universities to invest in educating the next generation of teachers, doctors, and engineers. The value of tax credits must be weighed against their cost to our classrooms, our colleges, and other vital state services. And in the zero-sum game we live in, the state budget, those numbers add up quickly. If we don't take decisive steps to reform tax credit system this year, the problem will only continue to grow. Together, Missouri's teachers, education leaders, and I call on the General Assembly to pass comprehensive tax credit reform this year to safeguard our continued investment in public education and to lay the foundation for economic growth in the 21st century. And now it's going to be my pleasure to invite several of these leaders to share a few words before we take questions. I want to begin with Gary Forsey, who's the president of the University of Missouri System. Gary, if you would.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak on behalf of my higher education colleagues. I think we would all agree that real economic recovery for our state and beyond occurs as we create new jobs, get our citizens back to work, and reap the benefits as new net revenue is produced. Education is the linchpin to that formula, pure and simple. Elementary, secondary, higher education has to be a top priority for us to achieve that, both in the short term as well as the long term. My colleagues and I have a responsibility to make sure that education remains accessible to our students and affordable to students along the way. We are committed to finding solutions to the state's economic challenges, and to that end, we have reduced our operating expenses, sought new sources of revenue, and made certain that our actions are aligned with the state's priorities. Over the past decade, the University of Missouri has, with the Governor's and General Assembly's support, and with all of our colleagues in higher education, committed to holding tuition flat for the second year for in-state undergraduate students. University of Missouri has added 14,000 students to our campuses, over 25% growth during this decade, and that's required a 30% improvement in our productivity to maintain the quality that you would expect. During that time, our state support is flat on an absolute basis. We've created task forces that identified ways to improve this pre-kindergarten through college pipeline, very important for this workforce development. And also we've had a task force that can determine how students can be better employers, better employees as they approach the workforce. We've issued construction bonds to improve aging labs and facilities on our own. And we've invested in growing our e-learning portfolio of classes to make sure that we're even more accessible and affordable and relevant to our students. We've introduced a comprehensive set of accountability measures to be sure that our stewardship to the state, that we are a good investment in providing that accountability along the way. So I applaud today the review of state tax credit reform. Tax credits have increased 2.5 times in the past decade, juxtaposed against flat support to higher education. So the question is that the right balance for the state? Is that the right balance for our priorities? It needs careful review, as everything else in the state is undergoing that kind of review today. So we appreciate the Governor's leadership in this regard. We ask the General Assembly's continued support of higher education by carefully examining, again, this important issue of tax credits and reform necessary to be sure that our priorities in this state can continue to be aligned and we achieve our real potential for growth. Thank you.
We now have Carolyn Mahoney, the president of Lincoln University, and she is this year the president of the Council on Public Higher Education in the state of Missouri. President Mahoney.
Well, good morning to all. I'm delighted to be here with you today as representing the Council on Public Higher Education, otherwise known as COFE. We are an association of Missouri's 10 comprehensive public universities. I would like to extend our appreciation to Governor Nixon for his unwavering support of public higher education, and for today focusing our attention on the need for tax credit reform. Tax credits are important economic development tool that supports numerous desirable and important accomplishments in our state. However, tax credits result in taxes not being paid to the state, and once issued are largely unavailable for examination by the legislature and the governor. In some sense, this makes tax credits the highest priority in the state budget. The members of COFE believe that public higher education is a pretty important priority and would support a process that limits or otherwise critically examines the state tax dollars that are dedicated to tax credits. Today's students are tomorrow's workforce, and we want to assure that we are doing everything possible to provide the preparation that students need, who will in turn move our state forward.